In the unforgiving grip of a relentless blizzard, deep within the desolate stretches of the Canadian borderlands, a tiny wounded bobcat kit fought a desperate battle against the encroaching darkness. Abandoned by its mother after a tragic hunt, its siblings lost to the icy depths, it huddled in a frigid rock crevice, each howl of the wind echoing the terror in its fragile heart. The raw, visceral fear of imminent death, combined with the gnawing pangs of hunger and the searing pain of its injuries, painted a grim portrait of pure, unadulterated despair. This was Shadow, a creature on the precipice, utterly alone, facing a desolate end, until a flicker of unexpected light pierced through its terrifying night. The cold was a dull, persistent ache that had burrowed deep into his bones, a constant reminder of the world's indifference, and his small body, once a bundle of twitching energy, now lay still beneath a fresh blanket of snow, barely discernible from the frozen earth. A tiny bobcat kit, not much bigger than a house cat. He was a mere wisp of life in a world swallowed by white. The last scent of his mother, a comforting musk that once meant safety, had long since been scoured away by the relentless blizzard howling near the Canadian border. He remembered the sting of the wind, the way it ripped through his thin fur, and the terror of being separated, a frantic mule swallowed by the gale. Now only the sound of his own ragged breathing, a shallow, desperate gasp, pierced the suffocating silence. His front left paw, bent at an unnatural angle, throbbed with a pain that had become a dull, distant companion. Starvation gnawed at his insides, a hollow emptiness that made his vision swim and his legs tremble when he tried to stand. He was alone, utterly, terribly alone. A phantom warmth, a memory of his mother's body curled protectively around him, flickered and died. He was losing the fight, he knew it. The cold was a siren song, lulling him into a sleep he suspected he wouldn't wake from. Each breath was a monumental effort, each shiver a tremor through his tiny frame. He had tried to hunt, driven by the desperate gnawing in his belly, but his injured leg had betrayed him, sending him tumbling into a drift. The world spun, and the fear, sharp and cold, clawed at his throat. He just wanted to be warm, to feel the gentle lick of his mother's tongue, to hear the soft purr of his siblings. But there was nothing, only the biting wind and the silent promise of an icy oblivion. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block out the swirling snow, the relentless white that had become his tomb. Then a new scent, acrid, sharp. It wasn't the metallic tang of blood or the musky scent of a predator. This was different, unsettling. It spoke of something large, something alien. He tried to burrow deeper into the snow to disappear, but his strength was gone. The smell grew stronger, accompanied by a low rumble that vibrated through the frozen ground. Then a shadow, impossibly vast, fell over him. Panic, raw and primal, surged through his exhausted body. He tried to hiss, but only a weak rasp escaped his throat. A giant hand, encased in something thick and dark, reached for him. He flinched, a searing bolt of pain shooting this through his injured leg as he instinctively tried to scramble away. Fear, sharper than the cold, jolted him awake. He was going to die, he was sure of it, at the hands of this towering, terrifying being. The giant's touch was surprisingly gentle, yet firm. It scooped him up when the world tilted. He felt the jarring pain in his paw anew, a sharp, white-hot agony that made him yowl, a weak, pitiful sound. But then a new sensation, warmth. Not the fleeting warmth of a memory, but a sustained, enveloping heat. He was placed inside something soft, something that smelled of clean fabric and a faint, sweet scent that was not his mother, but was not threatening either. He was jostled and the darkness returned, but the cold began to recede, a slow, welcome thaw. The sharp, acrid scent of the giant remained, but it was now laced with something else, something softer, something that whispered of safety, even though his instincts screamed danger. He fought against the encroaching unconsciousness, but the warmth was too comforting, too alluring. The pain in his paw, though still present, began to dull, replaced by a growing awareness of the soft folds around him. the gentle vibrations of movement. A needle, a sharp, brief sting, quickly followed by a spreading wave of lethargy. He tried to fight it, but the fight was long gone from his body. The giants moved around him, their voices a low murmur, their presence a source of immense, unsettling curiosity. He felt his injured paw being gently manipulated, a new kind of pain, different from the icy throbbing, but still pain. Yet this pain was followed by something else, a tightness, a secure feeling. He heard the crinkle of what felt like bandages, the soft whisper of gentle hands. The acrid scent was still there, but now it was undeniably mixed with something clean, something medicinal. He was moved again, placed onto something soft, something that cradled him. The air was warm, thick with the smell of other animals, and a strange, comforting quiet. His throat was raw, his hunger a deep, aching void, but then a drop of water, cool and pure, touched his tongue. Then another, and another. The clean, wet taste was a revelation, a gift from the terrifying giants, washing away the metallic tang of fear in the dust of despair. He swallowed deeply, greedily. The world was still a blur, but the icy abyss was receding, replaced by a fragile, tentative warmth. Inouye, Chapter 2, Whispers of Survival. Haunted by the shadows of its lost family, the bobcat kit clung to a fragile thread of life, defying nature's cruel hand. Huddled in a freezing rock crevice, the bobcat kit, now named Shadow due to its dark fur and elusive nature, relived the terrifying memory of its family's demise. The smell of fear, the roar, the sudden, terrible silence. Every gust of wind through the narrow opening felt like a predator's breath on his neck. Every rustle of dry leaves a threat. His tiny heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He was too weak to hunt, his small body a leaden weight, and the gnawing emptiness in his belly screamed, with a pain almost as intense as the dull ache of his festering wounds. His cries for his mother, hoarse and desperate, went unanswered, swallowed by the vast, indifferent wilderness. The cold seeped into his bones, a slow, paralyzing grip. He tried to remember the warmth of his mother's belly, the comforting rumble of her purr. But even those memories were fading, replaced by the sharp, biting reality of ice and hunger. His breath grew shallow, each gasp a desperate struggle. The world began to blur, the sharp edges of the rocks softening, the distant stars merging into a hazy smear. A deep lethargy pulled at him, a tempting surrender. He closed his eyes, the heavy lids refusing to lift. The cold was no longer painful, just a profound emptiness, a drifting, but then a flicker. A memory not of warmth, but of a chase. The thrill of tiny claws gripping bark, the scent of a mouse. A primal spark, buried deep, refused to extinguish. He had to live. He had to. With a monumental effort, he forced his eyes open, a faint, desperate spark igniting in their depths. A sudden, jarring shift. The world tilted violently. A strange, overwhelming scent filled his nostrils. Something acrid yet somehow warm. His body, stiff and numb with cold, was being lifted. He tried to lash out, a weak, pathetic hiss escaping his throat, but his paws felt like lead. He was enveloped in something soft. Though the jostling was disorienting, he felt a huge, warm hand gently but firmly holding him. The fear was immense, a towering wave. What was happening? Where was he going? This was not his mother. This was not the familiar, terrifying wild. The journey was long, a series of bumps and strange rumbling noises. Then the stopping. The soft material was removed, and he was gently placed on a flat, cold surface. Panic flared again. Giant forms loomed over him, their voices soft but unfamiliar and deep. A bright, glaring light stung his eyes. He squeezed them shut, trying to disappear. He felt a gentle probing, a touch that was surprisingly tender, yet invasive. A sharp pinch like a bee sting made him flinch. Then a wave of drowsy warmth spread through him. He fought it, tried to stay alert, but the fight was too much. When he woke, the world was different. The glaring light was gone, replaced by a softer, diffused glow. The air was warm, almost too warm after the relentless cold. He was still on the flat surface, but now something soft, a fluffy white cloud, was tucked around him. His wounds, though still an ache, felt less angry. The festering seemed to have stopped. And then a sensation he hadn't felt in days, a drop of cool, clean water on his parched tongue. He lapped greedily, the taste pure and life-giving. A giant hand, the same one from before, held a small, shallow bowl steady. It didn't try to grab him, just offered the water. He drank until his belly felt a little less hollow. The giants were still there, moving quietly, their movements slow and deliberate. They were no longer menacing. Their presence, once a source of terror, slowly began to morph into something else. Comfort? Security? He didn't understand the words they murmured, but the tone was soothing. He was given a tiny portion of a strange-smelling food, soft and easily swallowed. He ate slowly, savoring each mouthful, his body trembling with the effort and the sheer, unexpected relief. This was not the chase, the kill, the desperate scramble for survival. This was different. This was care. The world had dissolved into a searing, blinding white, an endless stretch of nothingness where the cold gnawed at Shadow, the bobcat kit, until even the memory of warmth was a faded dream. Every breath was a rasp, every heartbeat a dull thud against hollow ribs. The scent of fear, once a potent warning, was now merely the acrid taste in his own throat. He lay curled in the shallow crevice, a futile attempt to melt into the snow-dusted rock, to become invisible to the vast, indifferent expanse. His tiny paws, once nimble and sure, trembled uncontrollably, and the gnawing ache in his stomach was a constant, cruel companion. This was the end, he knew, a silent, frozen surrender to the white oblivion. Then a new scent, not the familiar musk of prey nor the sharp tang of arrival, but something alien, large and terrifying. It was a shifting, rumbling presence that drew closer, punctuated by strange rhythmic thuds. Panic, cold and sharp, jolted through Shadow's depleted frame. He pushed deeper into the rock, every muscle screaming in protest, his small body a tight coil of pure, unadulterated terror. The sounds grew louder, closer, until a shadow, impossibly vast, fell over his hiding place. He let out a low, guttural snarl, a sound far too large for his tiny frame, a desperate, instinctual warning. He was wild. He was dangerous. He would fight. A giant hand encased in thick fabric reached towards him. Shadow lunged, a desperate, pathetic attempt to tear at the offending limb. He felt the sting of something soft yet firm against his paw, then the shocking sensation of being lifted, gently but irrevocably, from the cold sanctuary of the crevice. He thrashed, a fury of tiny claws and teeth, a miniature cyclone of resistance against the unknown. He snarled, hissed, and bit, his instinct screaming for freedom. He was wild. He belonged to the snow, to the wind, to the harsh, beautiful indifference of the wilderness. He would not be captured. The struggle was brief, brutal, and ultimately futile. The world tilted, spun, and then the warmth, strange and cloying, began to seep into his limbs. His body, already pushed to its limits, began to fail him. The fight drained away, leaving only a vast, empty ache. He felt himself sag, his snarling transforming into a weak, ragged breath. Darkness encroached, soft at first, then absolute. He collapsed, utterly spent, into the terrifying embrace of the giant. The last thing he registered was a low, rumbling sound. Not a growl, but something softer. He awoke to a different kind of warmth. Not the icy grip of the storm, but a gentle, enveloping heat. His limbs still ached, but the searing cold was gone. The world around him was soft, not the hard, unforgiving rock. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy, sluggish. A new scent permeated the air, sterile, slightly metallic, but also something warm and sweet. He opened his eyes, which felt heavy and grainy, to see blurred shapes moving above him. Giants still. But these giants moved with an unfamiliar slowness, a quietness that was almost unsettling. A soft prick, a fleeting sting in his flank, made him flinch. But it was quickly followed by a wave of drowsiness, that pulled him back into a gentle haze. He felt something soft being draped over him, a pressure that was comforting, not crushing. He could hear the low rumble again, closer this time, and another softer voice. The words meant nothing, but the tone was gentle. He felt a soft, warm liquid trickle into his mouth, tasting of clean, fresh water, and he swallowed instinctively, greedily. It was the first true relief he'd known in days. The giants were still scary, but maybe, just maybe, they weren't going to hurt him. Maybe the warmth, the water, the strange, soft comfort was a promise. Chapter 4. First Contact, Fierce Resistance. The world spun, a blur of rough fabric and terrifyingly close human scents. Panic, a cold, sharp blade pierced through Shadow, the bobcat. One moment, the biting chill of the wild. The hunger, a constant ache in his belly. The next, a suffocating darkness, jostling and unfamiliar. He thrashed, a desperate, instinctual dance of tooth and claw against the invisible confines. But the darkness held firm. His breath hitched, a frantic panting, and the faint, acrid smell of antiseptic began to filter through the rough material. This was not the familiar scent of pine and damp earth. This was something new, something wrong. Then a sudden, blinding light, and the world opened up. Too bright, too vast. He was on a cold, hard surface, surrounded by towering figures that moved with unsettling slowness. Giants, their voices were low rumblings, their movements deliberate, but every flicker of an eye, every shift of a foot was a threat. Pain, a dull throb that had been his constant companion, sharpened into an intense burning in his side. He tried to rise, to bolt, but his limbs felt like lead, heavy and unresponsive. A hand, huge and gloved, reached for him. He hissed a guttural warning, the sound raspy in his throat. This wasn't rescue, this was capture. This was the end. His muscles tensed, every fiber of his being ready to fight, even though he knew deep down he was weak. Dr. Sarah's heart ached, a familiar pang, as she looked at the young bobcat. "Shadow," she murmured, the name a whisper of hope in the sterile air of the examination room. He was a wreck. Deep lacerations marred his sleek, spotted fur. One particularly nasty gash on his flank looked dangerously infected. His ribs protruded beneath his matted coat, a stark testament to prolonged starvation. His eyes, usually fierce amber in a healthy bobcat, were clouded with pain and exhaustion, yet still held a flicker of wild, untamed fury. Hypothermic, severely dehydrated, and those wounds. "He's lucky to be alive," she told her assistant, Mark, her voice tight with concern. She tried to approach, a soft coo in her voice, but Shadow lunged, a surprisingly fast blur of claws and teeth, catching only air she expertly pulled back. He was a coiled spring of pure, unadulterated terror. Days blurred into a monotonous cycle of fear and refusal. The giants tried to tempt him with food, soft, warm, meaty morsels that, in another life, he would have devoured instantly. But the fear was a knot in his stomach, tighter than any hunger. Every time a giant approached, even with the offered sustenance, he would lash out, a blur of fangs and claws. A warning, he would not be tamed, he would not succumb. He refused water too, though his throat felt like sandpaper. He remembered the sting of the needle, a sudden prick that had made his limbs heavy and slow. He remembered the taste of the bitter medicine they tried to force down his throat. It was all a trick, all a way to weaken him, to break him. He would not break. Then came the deeper darkness, the one that swallowed sound and sensation. He woke to a strange pressure in his side, a dull ache beneath a tight wrapping. The giants were there again, their voices low, urgent. He felt weak, weaker than he had ever been. He tried to fight, but his body wouldn't obey. He felt a searing pain, then nothing. A long, empty void. He drifted, an echo of himself, until a sudden, jarring jolt. A strange warmth spread through him, a pulsing rhythm that wasn't his own. He felt a hand, surprisingly gentle, rubbing his chest, then another needle, a quick sting, followed by a rush of something cool and invigorating through his veins. Sarah breathed a shaky sigh of relief, her hand still pressed against Shadow's small furred chest. His heart, which had faltered, a terrifying, near-fatal plunge during the complicated surgery to close his deepest wounds, was now beating with a steady, if still weak, rhythm. "He's back," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The operating room had been silent, tense, for what felt like an eternity. Mark had moved with practiced efficiency, anticipating her every command, but it had been Sarah's quick, decisive action, her deep knowledge of veterinary critical care, that had pulled him back from the brink. His tiny, resilient body, ravaged by neglect, had almost given up, but she wouldn't let him, not on her watch. He was a fighter, even in his unconscious state. He needed to heal. He deserved to trust. Day after day, a young vet battled a wild heart, hoping kindness could bridge the chasm of fear. For Shadow the bobcat, the world had been a series of sharp edges and sudden terrors. Now it was different, confusing. The giant Sarah loomed, but her presence, initially a source of panic, had begun to morph into something else, a dull thrum of constancy in a universe that had previously offered only chaos. The recovery was agonizingly slow. Each day began with a fresh wave of fear sent from the giant, followed by the familiar sting of a needle, a brief burning intrusion that always gave way to a wave of fuzzy warmth spreading through his limbs, dulling the insistent ache in his battered leg. His matted fur, once a tangled misery of burrs and dried blood, was now meticulously brushed, the gentle drag of the tool across his skin initially an unbearable tickle that he'd tried to scratch at, only to find his strength lacking. But then, as the days turned into weeks, the rhythm of the brush became almost soothing. He'd still hiss, a low, rumbling protest from deep in his throat, but the sharp edges of his fear were beginning to dull. Sarah dedicated herself to Shadow, spending countless hours by his side. He knew her scent now, a blend of antiseptic and something soft, like the faded leaves he'd sometimes rest on in the wild. She spoke to him, a low, melodic murmur that held no threat, no sudden shouts. Sometimes she'd sing, a quiet, tuneless warble that would fill the small enclosure. It was alien, yet constant. Most importantly, each night, she'd place her hand, thick with the scent of her skin, gently on his chest. He'd tense, every muscle coiled, ready to strike, but the warmth of her palm, the slow, rhythmic thump of her own giant heart beating against his fur, was new. It was a strange communion, a silent promise in the darkness. Despite the scratches and bites he'd inflicted in those early, frantic days, the deep gouges on her forearms, the angry red welts, her patience never wavered, slowly chipping away at the bobcat's defenses. He started to eat more reliably, the small chunks of meat, wet and rich with flavor, a stark contrast to the scavenged scraps and bony kills he'd known before. The water was always clean, cool against his tongue, unlike the stagnant puddles he'd often been forced to drink from. His body, once a roadmap of pain, was slowly knitting itself back together. The constant ache in his leg was subsiding, replaced by a phantom itch, a sign of new skin forming. He still preferred the shadowed corners of his enclosure, still startled at sudden movements, but the paralyzing terror was lessening, replaced by a wary vigilance. He watched Sarah, observed her patterns, her quiet movements, the way her scent intensified when she was near, but never aggressively so. Then came the night the world went fuzzy again, a different kind of warmth, not the dulling comfort of medicine, but a raging fire in his veins. Every muscle screamed, his breathing shallow and rapid. He felt too hot and then too cold, a violent shiver running through him that he couldn't control. The enclosure seemed to spin, the familiar sense distorted, replaced by the overwhelming smell of his own sickness. He wanted to run, to hide, to disappear into the comforting darkness of the forest, but his legs wouldn't obey. He collapsed, whimpering, a sound he hadn't made since he was a kitten. Sarah was there, a blur of movement, a frantic energy he hadn't seen before. Her hands were on him, cool compresses against his fevered skin, the metallic tang of more needles. This time the sting was sharp, persistent, but he was too weak to protest beyond a feeble whine. He felt a tube in his mouth, the metallic taste of water forced down his throat. She held him not gently as before, but tightly, supporting his limp body. Her heart hammered against his, a frantic drumbeat matching his own racing pulse. Hours passed, marked by the slow climb of the moon and the gradual paling of the stars. He drifted in and out, moments of agonizing pain, punctuated by brief, dreamless sleep. He could feel her breath against his fur, hear her whispered words, too faint to comprehend, but filled with an intensity that pierced through the fog of his illness. She stayed all night. She didn't leave him. As dawn finally broke, painting the sky in soft hues of rose and lavender, the raging fire in his veins began to recede. The shivers subsided. The world stopped spinning quite so fast. He opened his eyes, heavy lids lifting with monumental effort. He saw her face smudged with exhaustion, tears tracking paths down her cheeks. Her eyes met his, and something shifted. A tiny, almost imperceptible crack in the wall he'd built around his wild heart. A hint of grudging acceptance. The giant hadn't just healed his wounds. She had fought for his life. The world was a cacophony of new, confusing sensations, a stark contrast to the familiar wilderness of rustling leaves and the sharp tang of pine. For Shadow the bobcat, the past few days had been an endless blur of fear, pain, and the overwhelming scent of unfamiliar giants. His body, once a sleek engine of silent hunting, now throbbed with a dull ache, a constant reminder of the barbed wire that had ensnared him and the hands that had, in their own terrifying way, freed him. But beneath the fear, a tiny, tentative thread of something else was beginning to weave itself into the fabric of his awareness, a curious absence of immediate threat, a strange sort of comfort. This new territory, though strange and confining, didn't hold the snapping jaws of coyotes or the cold, indifferent silence of starvation. This was the first step in a long, winding road to recovery, a road Shadow had no choice but to travel. The most constant, and therefore most unsettling, of the giant presences was Sarah. She moved with a deliberate slowness, her voice a low murmur, a sound he was beginning to associate not with predator, but with the clinking bowl that held sustenance. Initially, every movement she made had sent a jolt of primal terror through him, his muscles tensing, ready to lash out or flee. His initial meals had been eaten with his back pressed against the wire. Every bite a frantic gulp, his eyes darting, anticipating danger. But the danger never materialized. The food, a soft, yielding mixture that tasted faintly of meat, was always there, left at a respectful distance. He'd wait until the giant was gone, the rhythmic thud of her retreating footsteps fading, before he would cautiously emerge from the shadowed corner, his stomach a traitorous rumbling that overrode his instincts. Then came the touch. It started as an accident, a brush of her sleeve against his side as she refilled his water. He'd flinched violently, a guttural hiss tearing from his throat, his body vibrating with the impulse to strike. But her hand hadn't withdrawn in fear, only paused, then moved away slowly. Later, it was more deliberate, a soft, warm cloth wiping at the remnants of food on his muzzle. He froze, every hair on his body rigid, his heart a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. He expected pain, a sharp prod, the harsh grip of hands forcing him into submission. Instead, there was only the gentle warmth, a soothing sensation that was oddly not threatening. He didn't fight, not truly. He merely endured, his muscles quivering, until the touch was gone, leaving behind a faint, clean smell. John, another giant, would often come to the enclosure. He was quieter than Sarah, his scent less prevalent. He would sit, sometimes for long stretches, simply watching. Shadow would pretend not to notice him, his ears swiveling subtly, his tail twitching almost imperceptibly as he tracked the giant's movements. John never approached, never offered food, simply observed. It was a strange dynamic, this silent acknowledgement, this unspoken agreement to coexist, even if only across a few feet of wire mesh. The little victories accumulated, tiny pebbles on the long road to trust. The day Shadow allowed Sarah to clean a small cut on his paw without a full-blown struggle was celebrated with quiet murmurs and approving nods from the giants. He still tensed, of course, his muscles coiling, but the outright aggression was replaced by a resigned tolerance. He still didn't like it, but he no longer saw it as a life-threatening assault. He understood, in some primal part of his brain, that these touches, though uncomfortable, often led to a lessening of the deeper aches. Then came the purr. It was a low rumble, barely audible, a deep vibration that started somewhere in his chest and reverberated through his entire body. It was a sound he hadn't made since he was a tiny kid, nestled against his mother's warmth. It happened during one of Sarah's quiet visits, after she'd left his food and was simply sitting, reading aloud from a thick book, her voice a low, soothing drone. The purr wasn't for her, not exactly. It was for the warm sunbeam that slanted through the window, for the full belly, for the unexpected absence of pain. But it was in her presence, a silent acknowledgement of the safety she inadvertently provided. She paused her reading, a soft gasp escaping her lips, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and profound joy. Shadow, startled by his own involuntary sound, stopped abruptly, blinking, a flush of embarrassment, if a bobcat could feel such a thing, passing through him. Later that day, a new offering appeared. Not the usual soft blended mush, but a small, firm piece of what smelled distinctly like raw meat. His instincts screamed caution, to snatch and retreat, to protect his food from unseen rivals. But the hunger, a constant, gnawing presence, was strong. Sarah approached, slower than usual, her hand extended, palm open, the morsel cradled within. He watched her, his ears flattened slightly, his eyes narrowed to slits. The scent of the meat was intoxicating, a powerful siren call. He could see the pulse throbbing faintly in her wrist, the smooth skin of her hand. It looked vulnerable, exposed. Every fiber of his being screamed to take it, to assert his dominance, to remind her of his wildness. He hesitated, a long moment stretching between them, a silent battle between primal instinct and the budding seed of trust. His stomach rumbled again, louder this time. The meat smelled delicious, pure, unadulterated sustenance. He took a tentative step forward, then another. His nose twitched, sampling the air. Her hand remained still, unmoving, a beacon of offering. He was close enough now to feel the faint warmth radiating from her skin. Then, with a sudden, decisive movement that surprised even himself, he lowered his head and gently, carefully, took the meat. Not a snatch, not a grab, but a deliberate taking, his teeth barely brushing her skin. The warmth of the meat, the surprising tenderness of her hand, registered simultaneously. He retreated immediately, the prize clutched in his jaws, and devoured it in a few quick bites. It was a monumental step, a breaking of the invisible barrier that had separated him from these giants, a silent agreement to begin to understand their language of care. It was the first solid food he had taken directly from a human hand, and in that small act, the true journey of trust had finally begun. Chapter 7. Wild Instincts. Reignite. The ache that had defined existence for so long was receding, replaced by a strange, tingling energy that pulsed through Shadow the bobcat's lean frame. The sharp, searing pain in his flank, a ghost of a memory from the dark days before the giants, had softened into a dull throb, easily ignored. The scent of antiseptic, once an alarming assault on his senses, now mingled with the comforting smells of hay and something else, a sweet, musky odor that spoke of other creatures, safe and confined. He remembered the terrifying metal embrace, the frantic struggle against unseen forces, the jab that brought a sleepy warmth. Then the soft blankets, the gentle hands, the taste of clean, cool water after what felt like an eternity of thirst. Each drop a tiny miracle. The humans, these towering, soft-spoken giants, had slowly transformed from a source of primal fear into a strange kind of solace. They brought sustenance, removed discomfort, and never, not once, did they threaten. But the quiet hum of healing had begun to give way to something else, something deeper, more insistent. A restless energy thrummed beneath his skin, demanding release. The enclosure, once a haven, now felt like a gilded cage. The soft hay, once a luxurious bed, now seemed merely a barrier between him and the cool earth. The smells that had comforted him now whispered of open spaces, of rustling leaves and damp soil, of the wind carrying the scent of prey, a scent stronger, wilder, than the processed meat he was offered. His paws, once heavy and hesitant, now twitched with an unfulfilled desire to run, to stalk, to leap. He paced, a low growl rumbling in his chest, a sound unheard by the giants, but deeply felt within his own being. His amber eyes, no longer clouded with pain or fear, sharpened, scanning every seam, every connection in the sturdy wire, searching for a weakness, an imperfection, a way out. The giants, oblivious to the storm brewing within him, still approached with gentle voices and offerings of food, but their touch, once soothing, now felt like an intrusion, a reminder of his confinement. He found it, of course, a tiny gap where the fence met the ground, overlooked perhaps by the large, clumsy giants. It was barely a paw width, but to Shadow it was a promise. He nudged, he scratched, he pushed, his strong claws working with relentless, quiet determination. The metal sang under his efforts, a tiny, almost imperceptible vibration, but to him it was a drumbeat of freedom. Hours he toiled, mostly under the cover of dusk, when the giants' movement slowed, their vigilance dulled, and then, with a final, straining push, the gap widened just enough. The cold, damp earth met his belly first, then his chest, and with a swift, liquid movement, he flowed through, leaving the enclosure behind. The world exploded with new scents, new sounds. The cool night air on his fur was exhilarating, a freedom he hadn't known he remembered. Panic, a frantic, human kind of panic, erupted. He heard the shouts, the pounding footsteps, the frantic calling of his name, Shadow, Shadow, a sound he now associated with comfort, but which now felt like a chain. He ran, guided by instinct, deeper into the cover of the wooded edges of the rescue center's grounds. The trees, though not truly wild, offered a thrilling illusion of it. His senses, long dulled by the confined space, flared to life. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind, every tiny scent carried a story. He moved like a ghost, silent, swift, his body remembering movements it had performed countless times in a past life. The thrill of the hunt, a forgotten melody, began to hum in his blood. And then, a flutter, a tiny, almost invisible movement in the undergrowth. A bird, small, plump, oblivious. The kill was swift, instinctive, brutal in its efficiency. A blur of tawny fur, a flash of teeth, a soft, final squeak. The taste of warm blood, of fresh meat, was an electric shock to his system, a primal satisfaction that resonated deep within his very being. This was him. This was what he was made for. He consumed his meal quickly, his body vibrating with the raw energy of the hunt. He felt strong, capable, truly himself for the first time in what felt like an eternity. A rustle, a human sound. He froze, a tiny feather still clinging to his whiskers. Sarah, the giant with the softest hands and the kindest voice, found him. She stood some distance away, not approaching, her face a strange mix of relief and something else. Something akin to wonder, perhaps even a touch of fear. He saw the remains of the small bird, a testament to his successful return to himself. A strange stillness settled between them, a silent acknowledgement of his wildness. He met her gaze, no longer with fear, but with a quiet, fierce defiance. He had survived. He had hunted. He was Shadow, the bobcat, and the world was calling to him. The enclosure, the gentle hands, the soft words, they had healed him. But now a new profound dilemma presented itself. How do you prepare a creature for true freedom when its very nature demands it. And you've grown to love its wild heart. The scent was wrong. A sharp, unfamiliar tang, like stale human fear mixed with something metallic and cruel, prickled at Shadow's nose, even through the comforting layers of straw and clean blankets. He'd learned to differentiate human smells, John's, earthy and reassuring, Sarah's, soft and sweet like the warm milk she sometimes offered. But this new smell, it woke a primal tremor deep in his bobcat bones, a memory of cold nights and the sting of wire. It was the scent of the dark times, the hunters. He pressed himself harder into the corner of his enclosed space, a safe haven that suddenly felt fragile. The familiar walls, usually a source of peace, now seemed to amplify the distant, unsettling sounds. Scrabbling, a low, guttural murmur that wasn't human speech, but something harder, more predatory. His ears, still sensitive from a past injury that had left a permanent notch, twitched, picking up the subtle creaks and groans of the building under duress. Relief, once a warm blanket, was now a fragile thread, his muscles tensed, ready to bolt, even though there was nowhere to go. These new human giants didn't bring soft hands or warm food. Their intent was sharp, like the glint of a knife in the moonlight. John had felt it in his gut all day, a cold knot tightening with every passing hour. The intel, sparse and delivered in hushed tones over a crackling line, had been enough. They're circling John, heard talk of a special order, something rare, wild caught. John knew what special order meant. It meant Shadow. The bobcat's unique markings and the dramatic nature of his rescue had, he now realized, made him a target, a trophy in the eyes of men who saw living creatures only as commodities. The rescue center, designed as a sanctuary, was about to become a battleground. He checked the perimeter cameras again, his jaw set. The shadows outside the fence seemed to deepen, to writhe with a sinister energy. A sudden, jarring thud resonated through the ground, vibrating up through Shadow's paws. It was followed by a grating tear, like metal complaining against brute force. Fear, pure and electrifying, coursed through him. This was not the gentle touch of healing. This was the brutal intrusion of the outside, the memory of rough hands and blinding lights from the past. He let out a low, involuntary growl, a rumble that was more fear than aggression, deep in his chest. His whiskers bristled, sensing the shift in the air, the coldness seeping in. The human voices, previously muffled, grew louder, coarser. They were not the soft, murmuring tones of his caregivers. These were sharp, commanding, filled with a brutal intent that made his fur stand on end. He could smell their sweat, their desperation, the metallic tang of something new and dangerous they carried. The barrier, the last thin thread of safety, was being breached. He remembered the sting of the dart, the terrifying disorientation. He remembered the darkness, the rough ride. He remembered the hunger and the endless thirst. He had found warmth and clean water here, and now it was threatened. A crash, a splintering sound that tore through the night. The flimsy barrier of the outside door had given way. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoed down the main corridor, heading straight for the rehabilitation wing. John, armed with only a sturdy flashlight and the unwavering resolve to protect the creatures under his care, positioned himself by the emergency exit, his heart thumping a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The silence that followed the initial breach was even more terrifying than the noise. It was the silence of hunters stalking their prey. Shadow, eyes wide and fixed on the narrow gap beneath his enclosure door, could hear them drawing closer. He felt the vibration of their heavy boots through the concrete, each step a hammer blow against the fragile piece he had finally found. This was it. The dark world, the one he had escaped, was coming back for him. The gentle hands, the soft words, the promise of trust, they were all in danger. Chapter 9, A Fierce Loyalty. The world had always been a series of fleeting shadows and sharp edges for Shadow, the bobcat. A relentless hunt for sustenance, the sting of a trap, the crushing weight of human hands that meant only pain. So when the giant figures had first appeared, a tremor had run through him, a deep-seated instinct to flee, to disappear into the undergrowth where he belonged. He remembered the swift, bewildering darkness of the net, the terrifying jolt as his body was lifted, the world spinning in a blur of unfamiliar smells and sounds. Then, a sharp, burning pinch in his flank, followed by a dizzying calm that stole the fire from his limbs. He hated that feeling, the loss of control, the vulnerability. He came to slowly, the world still fuzzy but no longer spinning. There was a low hum, a gentle warmth, and the distinct scent of something clean, sterile, unlike the damp earth and decaying leaves he was used to. The pain in his leg was a dull ache now, not the searing agony it had been. He tested it, a tentative shift of weight, and found it held. The giants were still there, moving around him, their voices soft, a low rumble that somehow didn't threaten. One, a female with a kind scent, had offered him a shallow bowl of water. He'd eyed it suspiciously, his whiskers twitching, before his parched throat won the battle against his primal fear. The water was cool, clean, a luxury he hadn't known existed. Each gulp was a small victory, a tiny thread of trust beginning to weave itself into the tattered fabric of his wild heart. The male giant, John, often sat quietly observing him, his presence a steady weight rather than a sudden threat. Shadow watched him with slit eyes, every muscle coiled, ready to spring, but John never pushed, never made sudden moves. This was rehabilitation, though Shadow had no word for it, only a growing sense of cautious acceptance. He remembered the shift, the unexpected jarring intrusion, the familiar sense of John and Sarah, the female giant, were abruptly tainted by something new, something acrid and metallic, fear. A sharp crack, like a tree branch breaking, but louder, more violent. Shadow's ears flattened, his instincts screamed danger. He'd been dozing, enjoying the unusual warmth of the afternoon sun that filtered into his new enclosure, a space that was slowly becoming his. The quiet rumble of the humans' voices had been a backdrop, a comforting rhythm he was growing accustomed to. But now those voices were sharp, laced with an unfamiliar urgency. Then came the giants, not John and Sarah, but different ones, darker, smelling of something unpleasant, like stale smoke and old fear. They moved with a predatory grace that Shadow recognized all too well, but it was directed at John and Sarah. He saw the female giant, Sarah, back against the wall, her eyes wide, her scent thick with terror. One of the dark giants was advancing on her, a menacing shadow looming over her smaller form. A low growl rumbled in Shadow's chest, a sound he hadn't made in weeks, a forgotten language of defense. The enclosure felt too small, too confining, trapping him while Sarah was in peril. He watched, helpless, the memory of his own past helplessness a fresh wound. And then something snapped inside him. Not the fear, but the invisible bonds that had held him captive in his own fear, in his own past. He heard Sarah's soft cry, a sound that pierced through his wild instincts, igniting something new, something fierce and protective. This female giant she had fed him had spoken to him in soft tones, had offered him clean water when he was dying of thirst. She had been a source of comfort, a giant hand that brought relief instead of pain. And now she was in danger. With a guttural snarl that ripped through the quiet night, Shadow launched himself at the weakest point of his enclosure. Wire gave way with a screech of tortured metal, his claws tearing through the mesh as if it were cobwebs. He was free, a blur of spotted fur and furious intent. He didn't think. He acted. The world narrowed to the dark, giant-threatening Sarah. With a raw, primal roar, he sprang. His fangs met flesh, a satisfying, tearing sensation. The dark giant bellowed, a sound of surprise and pain, stumbling back, releasing Sarah. Shadow landed lightly, his muscles coiled, ready for the next strike. He stood between Sarah and the retreating intruder, his body language a clear, undeniable threat. His ears were perked, his tail twitching, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. He was no longer the broken, fearful creature dragged from a trap. He was a protector, a wild spirit rekindled by an unexpected, fierce loyalty. John, who had been struggling with another intruder, looked on, his face a mixture of shock and profound awe. The belief that true affection was impossible for a wild animal, that a bobcat could never truly bond, shattered in that moment, replaced by the undeniable evidence of Shadow's ferocious and unwavering defense. Chito. Chapter 10. The Bittersweet Farewell. Love, John had always thought, was about holding on. But as he watched Shadow the bobcat stalk a dragonfly across the dappled sunlight of their rehabilitation enclosure, he knew that sometimes true love meant letting go. The confrontation with the poachers had been the catalyst, the stark reminder that even in their protected bubble, the world was a dangerous place, and Shadow, magnificent and wild, could not be confined. Not truly. A pang shot through him, sharp and unwelcome, but resolute. Sarah, leaning against the chain link, her face a canvas of conflicting emotions, didn't need to be told. Her heart, so deeply intertwined with Shadow's recovery, ached with a unique kind of pain. But she understood. She always had. The moment Shadow had first batted playfully at her shoelace, a flicker of trust in his guarded eyes, she'd known this day would come. True love, for a creature like Shadow, wasn't about ownership. It was about freedom, about the vast, untamed wilderness that called to him. The bittersweet truth of it settled heavy in the air between them. The preparations for Shadow's release into the extensive, protected wildlife sanctuary had begun weeks ago. It was a painstaking process, designed to reacquaint him with a larger, less human-dominated environment. They'd gradually reduced human contact, introduced live prey into larger, more complex enclosures, always observing, always ensuring his instincts were sharpening, his caution returning. Shadow felt the shift, a subtle hum beneath his paws. The giant things, the ones who had once loomed with needles and soft voices, were different now. They still brought food, the good kind that tasted of fresh earth and fear, but they stayed further away. The air, too, was different, bigger. The scent of pine was sharper, the calls of unfamiliar birds louder. A part of him, the part that remembered the warmth of their touch, the gentle scratch behind his ears, twinged with confusion. But another, deeper part recognized the ancient thrum of the wild, a song long dormant, now stirring. The crate, a familiar enemy from his first hazy moments of fear and pain, reappeared. It was bigger now, lined with soft hay that smelled of sun-dried grass. He remembered the metallic tang, the jostling, the strange sounds. But this time, there was no sharp sting, no overwhelming fear, only the steady presence of the giants, their voices low, soothing, even as they guided him into the confinement. He bristled, a low growl rumbling in his chest, but the memory of their gentle hands, the taste of clean water after days of thirst, held him back from full rebellion. The final checks were a whirlwind of activity, a blur of hushed voices and swift movements. Dr. Evans, her face etched with a familiar concern, performed a quick, last examination. Shadow endured it with a surprising stoicism, a testament to the trust they had painstakingly built. He felt the familiar pressure of hands, the cool touch of a stethoscope, but the fear was gone, replaced by a weary acceptance. The scent of disinfectant was still there, a ghost of his past, but now it was overshadowed by the growing scent of freedom. Sarah knelt by the crate, her hand resting against the wire mesh. Her eyes, glistening with unshed tears, met Shadow's. He saw the sorrow there, the same sorrow that echoed deep within him, but he also saw something else, a fierce pride, a boundless love that transcended species and circumstance. He nuzzled his head against the wire, his rough tongue extending to lick her fingers. A silent promise passed between them, a bond forged in pain and sealed with healing. The drive was long, the rhythmic hum of the vehicle a lullaby of impending change. He slept fitfully, his dreams filled with the ghost of a mother he barely remembered, the taste of fresh kill, the thrill of the hunt. He awoke to a different world. The air was cool, biting, filled with the intoxicating scent of unfamiliar prey, in ancient trees. The vehicle stopped. The giant things opened the crate. A gust of wind, carrying the scent of wild earth, washed over him. He hesitated, one paw outside the crate, feeling the cold, damp earth beneath him. The giant things were silent, watching. He looked back at them, at the two figures who had become his unlikely guardians, his unwitting teachers. John stood a few feet back, his expression unreadable. Sarah, however, knelt again, her hands clasped together, a silent prayer on her lips. Her eyes held the same bittersweet ache that resonated in his own wild heart. He looked at Sarah, truly looked at her. He saw the tears now openly streaming down her face, but he also saw the fierce light in her eyes, the unconditional love that held no chains. He understood then, in the ancient, instinctual part of his being, this wasn't abandonment, it was release. It was the ultimate act of love. He took a deep breath, the scent of freedom filling his lungs, stepped fully out of the crate. He turned once, a final lingering look at the giants who had saved him. A silent promise passed between them, a pact of remembrance. Then, with a flick of his tail, Shadow the bobcat melted into the dappled shadows of the ancient forest. A wild spirit returned to its rightful domain. Sarah choked back a sob, a hand pressed to her mouth, but a faint smile touched her lips. She had given him back to the wild, to the vast, untamed beauty he deserved. The pain of separation was a raw wound, but the joy of his freedom was a balm that promised to heal. Chapter 11. Return to the wild. The air, once thick with the scent of fear and the metallic tang of an unknown place, now carried the rich, earthy perfume of damp soil and growing things. Shadow, the bobcat, felt the stirrings of an ancient instinct deep within his bones. For so long, the world had been a blur of pain, then a confusing succession of gentle prods and soft voices. He remembered the blinding flash of light, the sharp sting in his flank, and then the heavy darkness, a welcome oblivion after days of searing agony. He recalled the chilling tremor that had run through his body, the way his muscles had locked in fear when the giant hands first touched him. They had smelled of strange things, disinfectant and something warm, like a faint, sweet meat. But then those giant hands had been surprisingly gentle, applying a cool, soothing pace to his burning leg. The taste of clean water, offered in a shallow dish, had been a revelation after days of scrounging muddy puddles. The soft, warm blanket had cradled him, a stark contrast to the cold, hard ground where he'd collapsed. The giants who loomed so large and spoke in low, rumbling sounds, slowly, imperceptibly, became less of a threat and more of a source of comfort. John, with his steady gaze and quiet movements, and Sarah, whose voice was like the soft rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze, became familiar anchors in his new, bewildering world. Days blurred into weeks, marked by the rhythmic opening and closing of a door, the clink of metal bowls, and the reassuring presence of the giants. His leg, once a fiery inferno of pain, now throbbed with a dull ache, then a mere ghost of discomfort. He could stretch, truly stretch, feeling the pull of muscles that had atrophied from disuse. The food was always plentiful, always delicious, and always served with a calm patience that slowly eroded his ingrained suspicion. He learned that a soft scratch behind the ears, while startling at first, was not a prelude to harm, but a strange, pleasurable sensation that made his ruff tingle. He began to associate the scent of their hands with safety, with nourishment, with the cessation of fear. Then came the bigger space, the smell of real earth beneath his paws again, the rough bark of trees, the distant calls of birds. He stalked imaginary prey, testing the strength in his healed leg, feeling the joy of movement, of being a bobcat again. He was ready. He felt it in his sinews, in the twitch of his whiskers, in the sharp focus of his eyes. The moment of truth arrived. The giant John opened the gate of his enclosure, not with a loud clank, but with a soft click. The barrier that had defined his world for so long was now gone. The scent of the truly wild, unbridled forest rushed in, a heady mix of pine, damp leaves, and the elusive scent of deer. He took a tentative step, his large paws sinking slightly into the soft earth. He looked back, his amber eyes finding Sarah and John, who stood a respectful distance away. There was no fear in their faces, only a quiet understanding, a deep, silent gratitude that mirrored his own. A profound connection, forged in vulnerability and trust, passed between them in that suspended moment. Then something shifted. The wild called louder. The forest beckoned. With a sudden, explosive burst of energy, Shadow launched himself forward. Not a hesitant trot, not a cautious walk, but a powerful, unbridled dash. His muscular body flowed like liquid gold through the tall grasses, a blur of tawny fur and white-tipped ears. He didn't look back again. The scent of freedom, the thrill of the chase, the ancient knowledge of survival surged through him. He was a shadow indeed, disappearing into the vast green embrace of the wilderness, reclaiming his rightful place. Sarah and John stood there for a long time, watching the spot where he had vanished. A joyful ache settled in Sarah's chest, a testament to the life they had saved, the trust they had earned, and the wildness they had returned. He was gone, truly gone, back to where he belonged. And that, they knew, was the greatest triumph of all. Months later, an unexpected update brings tears of joy, confirming Shadow's ultimate triumph and a lasting legacy of love. The rhythmic thrum of the forest had become Shadow, the bobcat's lullaby. The memory of the cold metal bars, the biting sting in his flank, the strange towering giants who smelled of disinfectant, and a bewildering mix of fear and something softer. It all felt like a dream, a distant, half-forgotten nightmare, like a scar that had faded to a pale line beneath his dappled fur. Now the earth was cool beneath his paws, the air alive with the scent of pine and distant prey. His muscles, once stiff, protesting, rippled with a newfound strength, honed by the chase and the leap. The world was vast, a symphony of rustling leaves and chirping birds, and he was a part of it, a sleek, silent hunter. Life had settled into a primal rhythm. The hunger, sharp and demanding, was met by the thrill of the hunt. The need for shelter, by a den dug deep beneath the gnarled roots of an old oak. The fear, a necessary companion that kept him sharp, alive. But there was a difference now, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. The ingrained terror that had once made his heart hammer at the slightest unexpected sound had receded. He still maintained his distance from the bipedal creatures, their scent a cautionary note on the wind, but the paralyzing fear was gone. He remembered the soft pads that had cleaned his wounds, the gentle pressure of fingers against his fur, the steady supply of food that had filled his empty belly. They were giants, yes, but not all giants brought pain. Some brought warmth and sustenance, and eventually freedom. Then there was her, a flash of tawny fur in the undergrowth, the same distinctive bob tail, eyes like polished amber. She was sleek, cautious, a perfect match in spirit and form. The initial wary dances, the low growls of assertion, slowly softened into a quiet understanding. But the forest, once a solitary kingdom, now held another presence, a comforting echo of his own silent movements. They hunted together, rested in sun-drenched patches, their territories overlapping, then merging. It was a partnership born of instinct and the shared wildness of their spirits. One brisk spring morning, a new scent joined their own. Tiny, fragile, yet undeniably vibrant. Deep within their den, nestled in the protective warmth of his mate, were 3 bundles of fur. 3 tiny, squirming kits, blind and utterly dependent. Shadow the bobcat felt a surge he hadn't known before, a fierce, protective instinct that dwarfed even his most potent hunting drive. These were his legacy born of the wilderness, untainted by human cruelty or the confusing kindness of cages. He watched as his mate nudged them, her soft purrs a counterpoint to their tiny squeaks. This was the circle, complete and unbroken. The future? Back in the world of towering giants, a message arrived at the sanctuary, a simple email that brought Sarah's work to a sudden, joyful halt. John stood beside her, his arm a comforting weight around her shoulders as she read. Shadow the bobcat had not only thrived, but he had found a mate. And even more incredibly, he had become a father. 3 healthy kits, observed from a respectful distance by the wildlife cameras, had been confirmed. The attached images showed a sleek, powerful male bobcat, unmistakable even from afar, moving with confidence and a quiet pride. His fur was vibrant, his movements fluid, utterly free. And then the tiny blurry images of his offspring, glimpses of a new generation. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, hot and unexpected. But these were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. John squeezed her tighter, his own voice thick with emotion. "He made it, Sarah. He truly made it." The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of countless sleepless nights, delicate surgeries, endless hours of observation, and the profound, almost spiritual investment they had made in this wild creature. Shadow the bobcat, once a broken shadow of himself, now cast a long, vibrant one in the wild. His new family, thriving in the freedom he had so desperately yearned for, was not just a success story, it was a testament to resilience, to the power of careful rehabilitation, and to the unwavering belief that every life, no matter how broken, deserved a chance at a complete, triumphant circle. For Sarah and John, seeing Shadow's ultimate rebirth, his legacy in the wild, brought a profound healing to the quiet hurts of their own past, a sense of completion they hadn't realized they so desperately sought.